Hello, everyone. Welcome to United States News. How Biden's big win in the Senate could change America and reshape his fortunes. If the U.S. House soon passes the Senate's landmark climate change and health care bill, it will help validate the Democrats' monopoly on political power in Washington and hand Joe Biden a notable presidential legacy ahead of November's midterm elections. The measure finally squeezed through the Senate after an exhausting and dramatic round-the-clock marathon that stretched into Sunday afternoon, a major breakthrough following months of Democratic infighting that gouged deep divides in the party. The Inflation Reduction Act may not live up to its name and cut the cost of living. It dashed some big dreams of progressives who wanted it to do more. And its final passage may come too late to save Democrats in the midterms. But it's still an enormous win for the party that seemed impossible just weeks ago. In a goal Democrats have been chasing for decades, the legislation will for the first time give Medicare the power to negotiate the cost of a limited basket of prescription drugs, thereby bringing down costs. In extending Affordable Care Act subsidies, it could save health care coverage for countless people. And in spending nearly $370 billion to reduce emissions that contribute to climate change, it goes most of the way to reaching Biden's ambitious plans to create a clean energy economy. The bill could also help revive U.S. global leadership in the quest to save the planet by prodding other nations to follow suit. The victory is all the more remarkable since it was achieved against vehement GOP opposition in the 50-50 Senate, where Democrats had no room for error. Democrats spent months negotiating with themselves, as moderate senators like West Virginia's Joe Manchin and Arizona's Kyrsten Sinema extracted concessions that progressives had little choice but to accept to save the bill. Coal State Senator Manchin revived the measure after reversing his opposition late last month and agreeing to a clean energy push in return for concessions on fossil fuels. At times, Biden was in the weeds trying to get this major chunk of his domestic agenda enacted. The credibility of his presidency depended on overcoming the obstacles to significant economy-changing legislation. But in recent weeks, saddled by plunging approval ratings, he let the Senate work its will and accepted a final result that fell far short of his original aspirations for a Franklin Roosevelt-style transformation. The Senate finally passed it, with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie shortly after Biden emerged from the White House from his second COVID isolation. All major new laws are judged in multiple ways, on their impact on the lives of Americans, on how they shift the political environment, and how they appear in retrospect, many years down the road in history's ledger. So even if Democrats' achievement may not be rewarded at the ballot box anytime soon, it might not go without notice in the long term. How voters and history will judge the big Democratic win if, as expected, this bill is passed along party lines in the House this week. Its real-world impact will be measured in whether it lives up to Democratic claims that it will slash carbon emissions at a time when the deadly effects of climate change, seen in extreme floods, droughts, and wildfires, are becoming ever more obvious. The party and the White House also say the bill could have a massive human impact by helping elderly Americans struggling to pay for certain vital medicines and create real quality-of-life improvements for millions. And in extending Obamacare subsidies, this measure would lock in and prolong one of the greatest achievements of Democratic rule in the 21st century. Then there are electoral reverberations from the passage of a bill that, like most legislation, will take months and years to be fully implemented, and so could lack immediate, transformative political after-effects. It's unclear whether this push, which will enshrine a major piece of Biden's agenda, will rescue the president's fast-diminishing political fortunes. His approval rating, which has dipped below 40%, threatens to drag down Democrats and smash their hold on power in Washington in November. Democrats have faced a savage political storm for much of this year, as a nation exhausted by the pandemic has faced soaring gas and grocery prices. This legislative achievement could at least give them a chance to re-engage with their voters, some of whom have given the president poor marks, according to recent polls. Democrats can argue they have made the most sweeping investments in combating climate change in history, an important consideration for generations, and especially young voters, who will live with a warming planet. This is an absolute historic investment in climate change, White House climate advisor Gina McCarthy told CNN Pamela Brown Sunday, touting the measure's impact on fostering clean energy, growing jobs, and saving consumers money. To get older voters to the polls, meanwhile, Democrats can stress drug price cuts now that Medicare will have some negotiating power. Taken together with the Supreme Court's overturning of the constitutional right to abortion and a recent easing of gasoline prices, Democrats have reason to hope their voters will turn out this fall. Driving base voters to the polls may not save the House, which many election analysts believe is heading to the GOP. But it could play into the critical handful of races that will decide the control of the Senate, where Republicans need to gain just one seat to win the majority.